do a certain line of questioning.
Okay. You lead us.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in our studios at the City World Radio Network. We're speaking with Dina Wilcox and Fry, and I have my mentor and producer, Anthony LaFazzo, on the program. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing fairly well. I wanted to just make note that this week and this month, the whole nation, if not the whole world, will be commemorating the death of the President, John F. Kennedy, 50 years ago, November 22nd. And just a word from here, all of us here at City World Radio, to acknowledge his contribution to world affairs, and the fact that very possibly, most likely, we're all here because of him and Mr. Khrushchev. Had they not had the courage not to have a cataclysmic nuclear exchange, maybe none of us would be here now, neither would our children or grandchildren. So I think it's worthy. That alone has earned him our highest acknowledgement.
There's never been a spot like Camelot.
Very much so. I wanted to ask Anne a question.
Yes.
When you came to New York City, I know that you had to start a new client list, and being in business a long time, I know that that's very difficult. Did you see more, I would gather that there'd be more opportunities here than in Austin. Not to take anything from Austin, but I'm guessing that there's a lot more corporations, businesses, business entities that require the kind of work that you do.
Well, it's interesting. First of all, where I live is not, where my work is not dependent upon where I live. So even though I lived in Austin, I had clients in other states and cities.
And you had to travel. You had to travel there.
Sometimes I would travel there if I was speaking, but if I was coaching, I do a lot of it by phone. So currently, I don't have any clients in New York at all, to tell you the truth. I have on occasion. What I found out about New York was that it was much harder to break into than I thought. So it's just the opposite of your thought, actually. I thought, oh, there's a gazillion companies here and corporations, and I'm just going to walk right in and I'm going to overwhelm them with my talents. And that didn't happen. I found out that I was an outsider. I didn't live here, and it took me a long time, and still is taking me time to feel like I can get into some of these companies.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I understand about how hard it is. The potential is here.
The potential is definitely
yeah, maybe
here.
That's a better way to put it.
Right.
You're absolutely right, but
right.
It's difficult at best in any business.
Yeah, and I've been self-employed for 27 years, so I get that, and it's a roller coaster. The thing that was really hard for me is that the economy began to tank in about 2008, and 2009 is when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so my business went bye-bye. And there I was, being single, living in the most expensive city in the country, on my own, having to figure out how I was going to live and survive. And thank God I had a little bit of savings to help me. And didn't gain new clients at all during that time, and I'm still building back up.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
We're glad you have a wonderful flatmate in Dina, and the relationship is working. I guess the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It seems that you have a great synergy and energy together as flatmates. What do you do, Dina? We'll start with you first. In your spare time, what interests do you have other than, writing and professional pursuits?
Well, I love everything that I do in the city. I love just going out and meeting somebody for a cup of coffee and sitting for hours talking about anything that you're curious about. That's just great. The quality of the people who are here and available to hook up with in a friendship kind of way. And
you have to be careful of that word these days.
I know. I'm going to be really careful now and explain what I mean by that. But it's tremendous. It's one of the reasons that I came back from the Hudson Valley. I was born in the city, and I'm just so glad to be back. So I do all of the museums and the movies and the shops and the restaurants, and I love walking everywhere in the city. What I love most is that people look like me here, and they sound like me, and they're curious about things as I am, and it's just, I love being here. But I do spend a lot of time at my computer writing. I'm working on, as I mentioned before, I'm writing another book, and I've got some plans for books down the road as well.
What kind of book?
Well, the first book was, as you said, about the science of the brain. The next book is on consciousness and reality, and I think that people will be surprised what I've come up with what I've come up with, and I hope that they will be able to enjoy it. The books that I write, though I do some research that is way above me intellectually, some of it is really hard to understand, is all about people who are like me, who are not scientists, who are not philosophers necessarily, who are just curious about the world that they live in and who they are. So this book, for instance, that I'm working on, will look at consciousness because that's something that we all have, and it's something that for some reason, or for a bunch of reasons actually, the professionals in the various sciences can reach no agreement about. And that kind of leaves us, who I call the non-scientists, that leaves the non-scientists free to just enjoy themselves in their consciousness and call it whatever they want to. And I think that if you're looking at consciousness, it impacts your reality. That's the beginning of that conversation. And reality is nothing like what we think it is, and I'm going to offer some other views on what reality might really
Excellent,
be.
and you got to come back on the Bill Russo Show or on the A.C. Lowe Show.
You took the words out of my mouth because we haven't even scratched the surface here.
Yeah,
I want to hear about Ann's experiences here.
it's in the
She
book.
dropped that little bit of a hint.
50 Shades of Pink is the subtitle.
This is not one of these books where in junior high they write the page numbers on the inside flap.
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. So, Ann, tell us about your interests and also tell us about your son.
Well, probably my biggest interest is my son. He's a 35-year-old rock star, lead singer of a band called Distant Lights Music. Distant like far away, lights like light. Music.com. They're in Austin, Texas.
DistantLights.com.
Distant Lights
Oh,
Music.
DistantLightsMusic.com.
So he's a rock singer. He's also a very nice person. He doesn't have that arrogance that sometimes you see in the performing world. Of course, he's not a really big star yet, but they're pretty well known in Texas and Louisiana and Oklahoma, and they've done one tour, and they're hoping to do another tour. And so he's the love of my life, and I think he's an old soul who's lived a few times before because he's really smarter than I am in many, many ways. A teacher to me as well. The other things I like to do, one of the reasons I came to New York is because I love theater. Unfortunately, I can't afford to go to theater very often. I'm looking for a rich boyfriend who might be able to take me to theater more often. But I do love theater when I can go. And
Maybe one of your listeners, Anthony, in the Aleutian
I
Islands.
think
could
we can make an exchange. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, there's not a problem.
And I would share all my stories with you if you would do that for me.
Wow, that's
Okay.
very enticing.
So, I love movies. I go to movies all the time. That's like my therapy. I read voraciously. I love to walk. I don't walk as much as Dina, but I do walk quite a bit. She's a workout fanatic. I'm not. I'm trying to let that rub off on me. And the same thing. I love to kind of go hang out with people, have long conversations. I especially like the number of interesting people that live here. I mean, they're really interesting. They're not into, oh, well, we're going to just go hang out and have a drink. It's much more, let's talk about philosophical stuff. I'm kind of a pseudo-intellectual.
Well, speaking of interesting people, I want to thank both of you, Ann Fry and Dina Wilcox, for being on the program. And I want to turn everyone's attention to Anthony LaFaso, who is one of the most interesting guys that I know. And recently he held an event, a gathering in his apartment to commemorate President John F. Kennedy and, of course, his wife, Jacqueline. And November 22nd, 2013 is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of the late John F. Kennedy. Anthony LaFaso happened to have saved almost every newspaper from that afternoon and following day. Is that right?
Yes, I bought every paper I could get my hands on. This was before television news really got geared up. That event was one of the events that started to push television news to the forefront. But in those days, everyone looked for the extra to hit the street. And I bought up the extras, and they had all of the photographs that are now iconic, and we've seen dozens of times over the last 15 years.
And I want to thank you and your wife, Lorraine LaFaso, for having hosted a wonderful gathering of about 20 to 25 people where you displayed these newspapers that you had collected, watched some videos, and we talked about where we were, and if you weren't even born yet, there were people there who would talk about the impact
Yeah, I really appreciated the comments of the young people who were not yet born, and they're quite in tune with their understanding of what transpired and how close. We had a conversation. I got to go real quick. We had a conversation, Ann, Dina, and I, before the show, and Ann was in Miami at the time, and they were absolutely certain that they would be destroyed. They would go to school in the morning but never get home that night. They knew that this was right on the cliff, on the edge of the cliff.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for listening to the Bill Russo Show. Also, I want to mention Anthony LaFazzo has his own YouTube channel, aclowe, ACLOWE, and I have mine under the name Fab Intro on YouTube. Thank you again for listening live from New York. This is Bill Russo.